All right, these are the video notes for finding slope, what slope is, finding it from a graph. This is part one. And then there's going to be a part two that talks about tables and finding slope from 2 points. So you should have this fold out. If you don't have it, really watch, maybe even take notes in your notebook. But I'm going to explain what I have written here for my other classes so you can understand what's happening. And write this down if you have this. If not, you can make your own notes. So slope is the numeric value that describes the rate of change for a linear function. Blah, 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 blah. You're like, what the heck does that still mean? So the numeric value, well, we're going to write slope as a ratio. And it's a ratio of how the y values are changing over the x. So we're going to write a ratio. And remember, there's three ways to write a ratio: a fraction, colon, and the word 2. But we're going to use the fraction format of it. And we're going to write our ratios in simplified form, meaning a simplified ratio. So if our ratio turns out to be like 12 over 8, don't leave it 12/8, but simplify it, meaning find the greatest common factor. And 4 goes into both of these. So divide by 4, 3/2. Now, if your slope, and it'll make more sense when I go through the graph, excuse me, the 3/2, if it turns out to be an improper fraction, leave it as an improper fraction. Don't change it to a mixed number, because otherwise it's no longer a ratio. So leave it as an improper fraction. Sometimes you'll see it a decimal. For example, money. If you're talking about money, you're not going to walk around and say, I have 3/2 of a dollar. You say, I have $1.50. So there's times that you will see decimals, and that's okay, but don't change it to a decimal unless it's really money and maybe some other crazy cases. Okay, slope. The letter M is used to represent slope. And it drove me crazy, and I always wondered as a kid, and even today in my adult life, saying, why do they pick certain letters or symbols to represent it? Well, doing some research, they believe, it's not proven, but there's a huge belief, that M, they use the word M from the French word monter, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, which means to climb. So that M, when you see it in an equation, we'll get really good at seeing this in an equation, that's going to represent slope and how the y's are changing over the x. This symbol. This is something you're going to see in higher math to where we don't want to write out tons of words. And so they use this symbol, which is called the delta, which is a Greek letter, which I think is the fourth letter of their alphabet. Not for sure, I believe it is, but it's called delta. So delta y over delta x. All that means is the change in y, or the change of y. How did the y values change? Over how did the x values change? So take a minute to pause this and make sure you write down those notes. So if you ever see me do that, that's a quick symbol to say the change in. All right, now graphing. We're going to focus on how to find the slope from a graph first. So first of all, we talked about 4 different types of slope: positive, negative, 0, and undefined. Remember slope dude. So the first thing I ever do is I look to see the line and say, okay, I know it's a negative slope. So my number is going to be a negative number. Then you can pick 2 points. Now you want to draw a right triangle between 2 points, meaning, like here's an example. I picked this point and this point. And then I drew a right triangle and I counted how many spaces, not corners, don't count the corners, how many spaces, how many times did I drop down? And that's going to be your top number, that's your change in y, over your change of x. Well, I knew it was going to be negative because the line's going negative, but then I'm going down 6 and over 3. So 6 over 3, simplify it. Well, that's like negative 2 over 1, but don't leave it as an over 1. It's going to be a negative 2, so simplify it down negative 2. Then I chose 2 other points. So I just and you don't have to do all of this all the time, but I wanted to prove to the students that if I pick these 2 points, well, I'm going down 8 over 4, and so it's going to be 8 over 4 with a negative because it's a negative slope, and that simplifies down to negative 2. Well, then we chose these 2. Well, then this time I'm like, well, heck, let's go up and let's go over this way. It doesn't matter if you go up or down, but as long as you do the rise over the run. So that because it's the change of y over the change of x. So I went up 2 and over 1. Well, it's a negative because it's a negative slope. So my simplified fraction number is a negative 2. It doesn't matter which 2 points you pick. It's linear because it's a line, meaning it has a constant rate of change. So that is your notes that I want you to make sure you have. And then you should have this worksheet, hopefully. If not, I'll do a quick explanation and then you can do this on your own. But I had this already copied for you and written on your paper. But rise over run, simplify all fraction, and leave as an improper fraction. So if it's an improper fraction, don't change it to a mixed number. So again, these have the 2 points. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going up 1 over 2. I could go down 1 and over 2, but the first thing I do is I look to see, okay, it's a positive slope. So I'm going to make sure it's a positive number. Your change of y over your x, your rise over run. Okay, so it's going to be 1/2. This one, this is a negative slope. So it's going downhill, but I'm going down 2 and over 2. Again, count the spaces, not the corners. So each of these, look at the ordered pairs and go the rise over the run. And I want to see your right triangle so I can see that you're counting. Some of these, if you notice real quick, they're just flat, so you can actually represent it and look at this. Now I'm going to show you, well, hopefully I have enough time here, but I'm going to show you real quick on this one. You're not going up or down at all, so that's a 0 and going over 1. Well, 0 over 1 simplifies to 0. Okay, so that is a 0 slope. You can even recognize it just by seeing it. This one, hopefully you can see that the line is right on the y-axis. Kind of crazy, but it is. Now remember what this type of slope is from Slope Dude? It's undefined, but I'm going to show you something real quick. If you did the points, if you went up 2, but how far are you running? Rise over run, you're not going anywhere. The 0 in the denominator is undefined because real quick, if I set this up as a division problem, 2 divided by 0, there is no number divided by 0 that gives you 2. Okay, or not divided by 0, no number times 0 that gives you 2. So when you ever have the 0 in the denominator, when the 0 is under the fraction bar, it's undefined. Under fraction bar, it's undefined. Meaning there's no mathematical concept that what number times 0 gives you 2, and this is why it's called undefined. Okay, so that's what I want you to do. Wait, on the back of your paper, you have these. Notice there's no dots. There's no accentuated points. So here's what you have to do. You got to be real careful. You got to look to see where, this is really hard, to see where the line crosses the corners. That's kind of low. So look real careful right there. And then you're going to have to count. So you've got to find your points. Don't just make up your own points. Like you can't put a point here. It's not in the middle. You want to make sure, and don't use the arrows because you're not for sure. You want to find where it crosses, like right there, where it crosses the corners of the blocks or the squares. I don't know what else to call it, but so you want to be careful of that. Also, pay attention. If it's going downhill, it's a negative, so make sure your number's negative. If it's going uphill, it's positive. If it's going straight across, what's that? If it's going like this, what's that? And you don't have to put points on these. You can recognize it just from there. Okay, thank you guys, and have a good day.